Hello, all you amazing women, and welcome to How to Feel Like a Midlife Goddess. With me, Amanda Ryder, nutritionist and author. Now, I call this podcast How to Feel Like a Midlife Goddess because, let's face it, so many of us don't feel like shining in midlife. We can be grappling with physical and psychological symptoms, which can lead to a real loss of confidence, and it can feel like you're really losing your identity. However, I believe it's possible for us all to feel good at this time of our lives. So each week, I'm going to be sharing with you my best nutrition and lifestyle advice, as well as interviewing expert speakers. And week by week, together, we will build upon a foundation of healthy, sustainable habits that will really benefit us and make all the difference to how we feel. So stay tuned, because this is your recipe for thriving at midlife and bringing out your inner goddess. Today, on How to Feel Like a Midlife Goddess, I'm lucky to have a dear friend of mine that I've known for over 20 years. So let me introduce you to Kerensa Sheen. Now, I was keen to have Kerensa on the podcast because she has been on a life-changing journey, and that is because in the last couple of years, Kerensa has lost 60 kilos. Yes, 60 kilos, you heard right. And I think her story is really going to inspire and resonate with anyone who has ever struggled with their weight. So let me tell you a little bit more about Kerensa. She is currently working as an executive coach, and Kerensa's background, well, basically Kerensa's had a dazzling career and she's worked for many major multinationals. But I met Kerensa in Spain when I was living out there for 10 years, and I had my kids out there, and Kerensa had one child out there as well. And I think when I met you, Kerensa, you were working for PepsiCo and you were human resources vice president. Yeah, it was a huge job, I remember.
Yeah, it was a big job. It was a lot of fun. And I was on maternity leave when we met, and we just moved there from Belgium. My youngest son was 2 months old when we met, and you were pregnant. And then I went on whilst we were living in Spain to have another child. And so I was there for 6 years and you were there for 10.
Yeah, and I remember a lady called Charlotte introduced us, didn't
she?
Yeah.
Amazing
so
Charlotte.
We get on really well, and the rest is history. But anyway, Kerensa, tell everybody a little bit about you.
Okay, well, I'm 62, and as you can hear, I have a North American accent. My parents emigrated to Canada when I was 5. We lived there for around 18 years. And I came back to England in 1986, and I've over those 40 years also lived in Belgium. We lived in Spain, and we lived in Poland for various jobs of mine. And I live in Oxford now. I have a 19-year-old and a 23-year-old.
Brilliant. Okay, and you've come on today because you embarked on a kind of weight loss journey a couple of years ago, as I said, and we want to talk about that.
Yeah.
So, Kerensa, shall we start with, if you could tell us a bit about how long you've been struggling with your weight?
Okay, that's a very good question. Interestingly, in preparation for today, I did a calculation of how long I've actually been fat. And I'm horrified to say that it's actually 40% of my life. And so I was a slim child, I was a slim teen, and then around 17, I gained weight for the first time. I only probably went to a size 16. It wasn't very much, but it had a cataclysmic impact on my life because my parents, who had raised me, I had an idyllic childhood, but they had kind of revered me as a child and talked about how beautiful I was all the time. And, I began to believe it. And when I gained weight for the first time, my father rejected me. And for that first time that I had gained weight, I think it lasted 4 years. And during that time, my father could barely speak with me. And that impacted the rest of my life, because from that, I learned that I'm judged by how I look. And therefore, for the rest of my life, I've gone out of my way to avoid people when I'm fat, because I consider that they're judging me and that they think less of me. And that has had a bad impact on my life for sure.
Gosh, that is a lot for a human being to deal with.
It is,
and it hasn't been the way people have perceived you. It's probably been more the way you've perceived yourself, and you've projected that onto others. But a lot to live. That's hard to live with.
It is, yeah. I mean, I think that, I mean, I've talked to many people over the years,
Yeah.
and I've talked to people who I consider to be very slim, who've got body issues, who are, will avoid people when they go from a size 8 to a size 10. And of course, other people like me, I've been on boot camps. I've met many, many people over the years who have got, who are struggling with their weight or with body, with what they consider their body to look like. And I think that it's fair to say that anybody who's ever struggled with their weight will know what it's like to want to avoid a reunion, to avoid a social do, to avoid a dinner, to avoid anything. And you get very practiced at coming up with reasons and lies why you can't attend things. Over the years, I have, I've just avoided so many things. And I have missed out on many, many things because of it, which I think is so sad. But I know it's the reality. It's my reality, but it's the reality of so many people. And anybody who's listening will know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and I think for women, we put so much pressure on ourselves, don't we?
Yeah.
About how we look,
Yeah.
Our figures, and I think we're conditioned. I mean, if you were brought up in the sort of 70s and 80s, that, we're all taught to be as skinny as you possibly could, everything was low fat, don't eat. Yeah, terrible really.
Yeah.
And it leaves such a legacy for people, doesn't it? And
it does,
It did for you. Yeah.
And I think interestingly, when I was a mother at the school that my boys attended in Oxford, there was another mother in my year who wrote an article in the Telegraph about how, every time she walked into any kind of room, she assessed immediately who the fattest person in the room was, how she compared to that person, and then she would establish, once she knew who the fattest person was, she considered whether they were smart or dim-witted, because she didn't know whether she wanted to be friends with them. So you can imagine how that made me feel, and I was definitely the fattest mother in my boys' year.
Yeah.
And
how did you cope with that?
It was a barrier to overcome. I had to overcome that barrier to make friends, because there was definitely the desire not to be friends with the fat one. And so, not only did I have to overcome my accent, because the so-called American accent is always a difficult one to overcome, but there was my weight. And so I developed strategies to make friends. I became chair of the Parents Association. It was a very good way to meet people. That worked very effectively, because then people got to know you. But for sure, it really impacts how you feel about yourself, particularly when you're the fattest person in the room.
And I mean, how do people express that? I mean, you sure? I mean, I'm not saying that wasn't true.
Yeah.
But how do you know they were thinking that? Obviously, that lady wrote that article, but obviously that was her narrative.
Because it took a longer time than it would normally take to make friends. Because I wasn't the person that was always automatically invited. As you know yourself, you've been the new mother in the school. You know how quickly you've made friends. You know how quickly you engage with others.
Yeah.
You can sense, you can almost see the kind of reluctance to include you in something, because it's like you're an afterthought. Oh, well, you can come too. And then you finally get to know them, and they see that you're actually a normal person, and then you break those barriers down. But you can clearly see that there's like a little. It's a fence there that you've got to climb over to become friends with them. It's quite amazing. It's not tangible, but it is tangible. Yeah. It's hard to describe, and I think you have to have been there to understand it.
Yeah. Fair enough. So, it's been a lot for you to live with, hasn't it? And you've been, the time I've known you, you've been larger, you've been smaller, you've done some yo-yo dieting.
Yeah.
I remember you left Spain.
Yeah.
You came back to the UK before we did, and you came out to visit us, and both yourself and your husband Charles, you'd both lost a lot of weight, and I think you'd gone from like a size 18 to
probably a size 20 to a size 10.
Yeah, so
I've been on lighter life. I've lost 6 stone, which is 38 kilos in a very short time, probably 4 or 5 months. And that felt amazing. But at the same time, I recognized that it was unhealthy. I was 50% body fat. And but I didn't have loose skin or anything like that. It felt wonderful to be so slim. But I was always thinking about food, always. And the journey back was quite quick. I gained that weight, as you know, quite quickly.
I was just going to say, before we go there, because it's really interesting. But we were talking a bit about you felt that your parents judged you for putting on weight, and you felt that was very much part of your sort of adolescence. What happened in that process? Why did you suddenly start gaining weight? What changed?
I have thought about this a lot.
Because you were a slim,
I was slim
healthy,
teen,
normal weight.
yeah.
And I just want to say here, there's nothing wrong with being overweight.
Yeah.
I don't want anyone on this listening to this thinking, oh my God, it's, you know, if you're that, your life isn't as good. That's not the point here at all. The fact is that you wanted to lose weight for health reasons.
Yeah.
And as I said to you before, you know, I loved you when you were
of course. Any
size 20
yeah.
and, you know, now you're size 8, 10.
Yeah.
It's no different.
Yeah.
But I realise, and I'm really happy for you because I know how happy it makes you to feel that, you know, good in your own body. And I think that's what it's all about. Whatever size you are, whether you're a happy size 14, 16, if you're happy in your own body and you can be your sort of healthiest version of yourself, that's where it's at. But just going, you know, back to basics, how did you put that weight on?
Yeah, I've thought about it a lot because, you know, you try and understand how you sabotage your own life. Because despite what you've just said, there is no question that clothes do look better on you when you're slimmer, right? And, you know, and also it's a lot better now, but in the 70s and the 80s, it wasn't easy to get anything over a size 16. And so wearing clothes, wearing clothes that were a size 18 or 20, it's difficult to look what you consider to be nice. So I have thought about it a lot, and as I said earlier, you know, my parents were very, very focused on looks, and you know, when they saw me gaining weight, they punished me. And so I think that because the first time I gained weight was when my parents moved us from Canada back to the UK. They put me in a sixth form, second year of a sixth form, in a drafty school on the Wirral. And
Sounds delightful.
It was a shock after my extremely warm Canadian high school in very cold temperatures.
You know what us English are like? We like to suffer.
Yeah. And I think it was kind of it was my way of getting back at them, even though it was all very counterproductive because of course I'd lost the love of my father, but I was really angry with him for rejecting me, and he rejected me for 4 years. 4 or 5 years. Yeah, it was a really difficult thing to go through. And it made me very angry with him. My mother then blamed all their marriage problems on my weight. And, you know, and I mean, I was a size 16. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
So, but of course, in my head, I was enormous.
Yeah.
Yeah, because of this reaction that they had. And so by the time I got to my first year of university in Canada, I think I must have gone up to a 20. And I had gone from being extremely popular in high school and having boyfriends and, easily to go into my first year of university and suddenly having no boyfriends and feeling very, very ugly. And I don't know, I'm
so sorry that you had to go through that. That's just,
I don't, and I actually don't know why I didn't fix it. I wasn't punishing anybody then. I really don't understand that psychology. I would love to understand why that persisted. Other than the thought occurs to me right now that I think in my life everything came very easily to me, and suddenly, you know, I got to university and here I was, you know, maybe a size 18, 20, and life wasn't so easy and I wasn't so good at handling it. I don't know. Suddenly I had this adversity that I didn't, and I couldn't snap my fingers and overcome. Whereas I had to say I have a very charmed life as a child and a very charmed life as a teen. Everything came easily to me. Everything came to me, and I, to a certain extent, I associated it with my so-called beauty. You know, and by the way, if anybody sees my photograph, you know, it doesn't mean that I was beautiful. It's just what my parents said, you know.
She is beautiful.
Yeah. So
she's a midlife goddess, if there ever was one.
Well, I certainly feel like one, that's for sure. So I really wish I could understand completely what on earth was going on with me for 40% of my life that I let this happen.
Have you ever thought about having therapy?
Yes, I have. Yeah, I definitely have.
But you haven't, have you?
I had therapy once.
Oh, okay.
But it wasn't concentrated on that. It was focused on other things. Yeah, I don't think it would be interesting. But I really think it's all wrapped up in this beauty and everything coming easily to me. Image, and that being, you know, the way you look is the most important thing. And everything coming easily to me and suddenly not being able to handle adversity, which is, you know, unfortunately pointed to a certain weakness in my character, I suppose.
But you talk of weakness. I mean, we're talking to the woman who, I mean, your career has been incredibly impressive.
Yeah.
And probably out of all the women that I've known in my adult life, you've probably been one, if not the most successful and influential, and you were very well liked, and your career just took off, didn't it, really?
Yeah.
So you've obviously used all that sort of adversity in some way to... you've used it, and I know you, and I perceive you as a very determined person, and also someone that you can put up with a lot, and whereas a lot of people would crumble under the pressure, you never do. Yeah. So it's done some good on some level.
Yes, for sure. But
maybe too high a cost.
But you also know the story about how when I went to I went to work for a FTSE 10 company after I'd lost the weight on Lighter Life. I was 60 kilos. And I got this job.
So your total weight was 60 kilos?
I was 60 kilos.
Yeah, you were 60
so
kilos.
I'd gone down to a size 10.
Yeah.
I was looking great. I was 45, I guess. And I got this job to join a FTSE 10 company to be their future CHRO. And
CHRO?
Chief Human Resources Officer, so the top HR person in a FTSE 10 company, a huge job. Now, I didn't want to go to this company. It was something my husband really wanted me to go into. He wanted me to do the so-called last job. I had wanted to do other stuff, and he was very keen, as you know, for me to keep on working in order to enable what he was doing, because he was a freelancer in finance. And so I took this job, and thinking about it, I wonder if it was my own revenge, because I then took the job, got the job, looked fantastic, and then proceeded to gain. I'd lost 6 stone. I then proceeded to gain 8 stone back over the course of the next 3 years. And I worked for this company for around 3 years, and I can remember seeing the bewilderment on the faces of the people around me as I gained weight. And we had a journey then that went from Berkshire to Gloucestershire. I had a journey that went from Berkshire to Gloucestershire every day.
Your commute.
My commute, and I ate the entire way. And I don't know what I was doing. It was some kind of comfort. It was almost unconscious as I just ate. It was like an anesthetic almost, and I gained weight over this quite a long period of time, and I didn't get the CHRO job. Excuses were made about my performance, but it was I could clearly see the dismay on everybody's face around me, particularly the men who just couldn't understand what on earth had happened to this woman.
You gained that weight, really. So you lost
this weight.
You lost a lot of weight on the Lighter Life diet.
Yeah.
And then
gained it all back.
Yeah, you had this sort of high-powered job again.
Yeah.
And you had the long commute.
Yeah.
You were eating on the commute there and back. You were talking earlier before we went on air.
Yeah.
And
and I didn't want that.
And you
job.
felt that really influenced how your trajectory.
How I was perceived. Absolutely. Yeah. I could, I could almost see, the coming down the pipe that I wasn't going to get the job, and that reasons were given about why I wasn't doing so well on the job. I was moved to a different job. I mean, I actually did achieve some great things in that job because I got to do things I really loved. So it wasn't the end of the world. And I knew very quickly that from the relationship I had with my own boss at the time, that job wasn't ever going to come my way. And I was ashamed of what I was doing. I knew what I was doing. I also knew it was partly some kind of revenge tactic because I didn't want to work for this company. I've got some kind of subtle things going on inside me, I suppose, by how I get back at people when I don't want something and they make me do it. But I didn't like that company very much.
And did you find then with the eating that you were eating for comfort, or it was just revenge, or what was the thought process?
None of it was conscious. I had no idea it was revenge. I just knew it was a
coping mechanism, maybe? I don't know.
Not even coping mechanism. It was unconscious. I just had this whole. It was like an adrenaline, a dopamine effect of going to the services, buying the food, and eating it.
And what sort of food were you buying?
Strange stuff. Sandwiches, crisps, chocolate. Not chocolate bars. I don't really like chocolate. Biscuits, just stuff. I didn't even taste it. I don't remember eating it. I inhaled it, kind of thing.
Yeah, it almost sounds like a sort of reflex.
Yeah, it was just
knee-jerk kind of.
And then I wouldn't eat when I got home because I was so full.
And I would say, again, how many dinners and holidays have we had over the years? I've never seen you overeat, ever.
No. Well, I mean, like anybody who's very fat, they all binge eat at some point in their lives, and I've certainly done that. That was, to gain 8 stone back, that was quite something.
And what time period was that?
That was probably over 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
I said 3 years before, probably 3 or 4 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
So by the time I left that job, I was definitely a size 20, 22, and I joined it as a size 10. I was a very different person, because you start to see yourself in photographs. In the beginning you're in the front of the photograph, and then you learn the tactic of standing behind somebody so that your body is submerged. You just lose your confidence completely. Even though, as you say, I am a confident person. That's always what I've projected, but there's no question that you lose your confidence because you know that you're being judged, and you are being judged.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So wow, that's a lot, and we've had 2 yo-yos in that. You've lost weight, you've gained it back, and we know, we've talked, and you read my book, and we talked about, when you lose weight, you lose lean muscle mass.
Exactly.
Which is very metabolically active, meaning it burns a lot of calories. So often when people lose fat, they also lose their muscle mass. And I always think of it as your engine. The bigger the engine you have, the more muscle, the more calories you burn. So it's kind of much easier, isn't it, to yo-yo?
Yeah. Well, I just want to comment on what you've said, because of course we've known each other a very long time, and ever since I've known you, you've been very focused on health. You've been very focused on what you eat, and I've just let what you do sort of pass over me. I've watched.
I've tried.
I've watched you in interest as you've had so many different supplements and vitamins and nutritional things, and I've just said, oh yeah, that's interesting. And sometimes I've done a little bit of what you've done, but it's only really in the last 3 years. 4 years that I've become extremely interested in health. And if I go back to my diagnosis of osteopenia during the pandemic, but during COVID.
So your diagnosis of osteopenia.
Yeah, osteopenia.
So for people that don't know, it's not full-blown osteoporosis. It's just when
precursor.
You're starting to lose bone density.
And that was such a shock for me, because I had a DEXA scan because I'd lost 3 centimeters in height. And I remember telling you about it, and you said, are you on HRT? And I said, no, I never had any menopausal symptoms. And so you said, you need to get on HRT. And as you know, I had to battle to get it from the GP, and that was because I was overweight. I had high blood pressure. And so you gave me the mechanisms then to fight to get HRT.
And we talked, and again, just for listeners that maybe don't know, but when you go through menopause, you have lower levels of estrogen, and then that impacts, you need estrogen to build bone. So the estrogen for you was really important when you were osteopenic.
Yeah, exactly. And when I read your book, and I did more research after reading your book and learning all about what the impacts of menopause are on the body and all the things that we don't get told. It's something, a book like yours is so informative because it tells you everything that you should have learned from, I suppose, preventative medicine, from your GPs or medical practices over the years that you don't know unless you actually have access to someone like you who knows what they're talking about. So I learned so much, and that started the process probably during the pandemic, when I started to become interested in my health, because my parents both had dementia. So, post-pandemic, after the diagnosis with osteopenia, I did start to think I've got to do something about it, but I was still extremely passive about it. With my parents' dementia, and particularly my father's vascular dementia, which was totally related to his way of life and his diet, I knew that I was at risk of having the same thing, and I did not want it, because dementia is a scourge you do not want on your life, and I certainly don't want to do that to my children. So for the next 3 years, 2020 to 22, I yo-yoed a lot. I dabbled for the first time with intermittent fasting. I saw that it worked very well for me. I lost around 15 kilos in 2020. And then I ended up having to move in with my parents to take care of my very difficult father, and I gained it all back. And then that led to this thing that happened in June of 2022, when somebody very close to me died very suddenly. And this person I'd expected to be there for the rest of my life. She was 77, slim, fit, and someone who I'd just expected to be there for life. I'd met her when I was 4, like a fairy godmother. She was in Canada. I had avoided seeing her for years because of my weight. We had made a plan just the month before to see each other in October, so I was thinking I had to diet for that. And then she died. And, I should have been grief-stricken, but the very first thing that came into my head was, oh God, I'm going to have to go to Canada. oh God, I don't want to go. Oh God, how can I get out of it? And then the realization I could not get out of it. This was something I could not avoid. And so I started a diet that second. I immediately, I started intermittent fasting, which over the course of, I agreed with her son that I would come 6 weeks later. I actually missed the memorial, which is, so sad that I did that, but I invented excuses. I made an agreement with her son that I'd go in 6 weeks. That gave me 6 weeks to lose weight, which I think I lost 6 kilos. So I started intermittent fasting. I started walking every day. I started dancing for 20 minutes a day because I'd read that you could avoid dementia, or you could reduce the chance of dementia by 67%. And so those things helped me. They gave me some momentum. But there is no question when I went to Canada, and I went on a 3-province tour. So I started in Nova Scotia. I ended up in Quebec City.
So this was, can I just, so you went to Canada, you were still overweight at this point.
Oh gosh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So you avoided going, but eventually you went.
I'd avoided going. I hadn't seen any of these people for 25 to 30 years.
And these are people that you grew up with and knew you as a slim
They knew me as
Kerensa.
a slim person. I was 40 kilos heavier. I was 6 to 8 sizes heavier than the last time they'd seen me. And of course, the challenge I had was that I was starting in one province and ending in another one. I was starting in Nova Scotia, ending in Quebec City, which is probably around 20 hours of car journey for anybody that doesn't know. And I was seeing new people at every stage. So I couldn't at any point let up on the diet because I had to keep going, which is very difficult when people are seeing you and they want to cook for you and they want you to eat. So I was having to make up excuses. So it was very, very challenging.
Can I just ask, I'm going to stop you there 1 minute because it's really interesting, but what diet were you doing at this point? You were intermittent fasting. And what intermittent fasting were you following?
I had in the 6 weeks that I had prior to going to Canada, I sort of merged from a 16-8 to eating every 20 hours. And I was eating...
So 16-8, so you were fasting for 16 hours and you were eating in an 8-hour window.
Exactly. Yeah. Then I got to eating only every 20 hours and eating twice in a 4-hour window. I was only eating at this stage 1,000 calories a day. So it wasn't enough because I was crash dieting, because I was trying to lose as much as I could before I left. And so it wasn't the optimal diet. And of course, during my 3-week trip to Canada, it was almost impossible to do this because everyone had meals planned for me. So I ate as little as I could over that 3-week period, but I kept walking. So I walked every day for an hour. I was able to do that in Canada. I exercised kind of in my room at every opportunity because I just knew I had to keep meeting new people. Now, the interesting thing was that, I saw nobody had shock on their face when they saw me, but I didn't get a single compliment during that 3 weeks, and I was very aware of that because I'd always been kind of adored. I was very aware of it because they always
adored you.
They always adored me. So that was a strange phenomenon to go through. These people that had previously sort of showered me with compliments, and it makes me sound vain, but I'm not.
But who doesn't like it when you put a lot of effort into what you wear and you haven't seen someone for that amount of time? Yeah. You usually get, you look so well,
but I didn't get
something.
that.
I like your hair, or that's a beautiful dress.
Yeah, didn't get a single thing.
Oh.
So that was their way of coping, right? Because here I was 40 kilos heavier, and
that was their way.
That was their only way they could cope. Nobody showed shock, but there was that difference. That was a very subtle difference. They were all happy to see me and all that, and they were all wanting me to come back the next summer, etc. So that was humiliating. I think that was the most humiliating experience of my life. That 3 weeks having to continuously meet people and confront myself. That's what it was. It was confronting myself.
That sounds really tough.
It was tough.
How did you cope with that?
I thought about it every night.
You never turned to drink, or you were dieting and walking and
Yeah, that was the point, I think, that everything did start to change for me. I started to count the personal cost of having been fat and realized that I had lost years and years of relationships with people. In particular, this person, T, that had died, a few years earlier. She had tried to come and visit us at our house in Oxfordshire, and I had it was a real excuse. I think I'd broken my collarbone, and I wouldn't let her come. But I wouldn't let her come because I was heavy. I had nothing to do with my collarbone, and she still came to England, and I wouldn't let her come to my house. That's a terrible thing I did. She and her husband had to go somewhere else, for the period of time. So it was, I thought about that. I thought about the time I'd missed with her. And I thought about all the other people. I have lost friendships of people I've avoided and avoided and avoided. And in the end, they've given up on me. And that's a lot of loss.
It's a lot. That's very sad,
It is
and it's
very
a lot
sad.
to come to terms with now that you're somewhere else, if
Yeah,
you like.
exactly,
You're experiencing life slightly differently,
Yeah.
very differently.
You know, and I think, a lot of people who have had issues where they feel that they don't look as they want to, or they don't want to see people, will know exactly what I'm talking about. So over that 3 weeks, I thought about it a lot, and then I started to think, I'm going to come back to Canada next year, and I'm going to be the size that I used to be. I'm going to be the person that I used to be. And I think the other thing that occurred to me while I was in Canada is that I absolutely loved being with these people, and I couldn't believe that I'd missed out on 25 years of being with them. I love these people, they love me, and I'd missed out on a life with them. And we caught up very quickly. It's still something I've lost and that they've lost. So I decided by the end of that trip that I was going to go back, and I was going to go back healthy. I was going to go back slim. So when I arrived back in England, I was 3 kilos lighter, so I'd managed not to gain any weight, and that gave me a real momentum. I also decided that I was going to do this healthily. I had a whole year to do it or more. And so I structured I continued with intermittent fasting. Eating every 20 hours worked really well for me. I was never hungry. And I knew from talking with you, from reading your book, and also from doing a lot of research, that protein was incredibly important. I was thinking about my bone density, so I constructed a diet that was sort of 120 grams of protein. I tried to restrict my carbs to around 20 grams, but knew that I could go up to 50, and then the rest would be made up of fat. And I ate, which was very hard for me, around 14 to 1,500 calories a day. For someone who had always lived on 800 to 1,000, going up by that much was mentally tough, but I knew that it would work. And something my sister said to me very early in this journey was, she said, consistency is going to be your friend. She said, be consistent and you will make it. And that is exactly my watchword. I was consistent. I didn't waver. I don't think there's a day when I didn't walk. I walked every single day for an hour. I then introduced weights every other day. I danced every day for 20 minutes, which gave me enormous energy. And if I didn't feel like walking, I would dance, and dancing would change everything because it gave me a mindset. I could do anything once I danced. And that year, I can't say it was hard, because it wasn't hard. I was never hungry. The concept of cheating didn't matter to me, because I decided that there were two important things. One, I stuck to my time frame of eating every 20 hours and walking. If I did those two things, I could do anything else. Those are my two rules. And I stuck to them. I don't think I ever went off the diet. If it was a diet, it was just a new way of living, a new way of eating.
Yeah.
I ate very healthily. I mean, you know that I've learned a lot from you. I'd read everything in your book. I just ate superfoods, and I ate very tastily. I looked forward to eating, and I made sure that I made very, very tasty meals. And it worked.
And you said, Kerensa, that you weren't hungry.
Yeah.
Why do you think that was? Because that's what most people struggle with, isn't it? They just can't get over that. And we talked about this a bit last night. That your body chemistry changes when you're overweight, and you don't get the messages that you're full.
Yeah,
and then those messages aren't as strong.
Yeah,
because your body chemistry is not the same as maybe that of a slimmer person. So what do you think changed for you that you suddenly? You weren't hungry anymore, or you didn't have that mechanism? Or did you even say that sometimes when you ate, you weren't hungry anyway? You were eating just for the sake of it?
I forced myself to eat the second time. In that 4-hour window every time, there was a 4-hour window in which I ate twice. I had to force myself to eat the second time because I knew that the calories were really important. I had read, and I did a lot of research on intermittent fasting. I did a lot of research on autophagy, which is where the body consumes itself.
A sort of cellular housekeeper that comes in and cleans up.
And I wanted to trigger autophagy because I'd read that if you do trigger autophagy, then that's a way of reducing loose skin. Obviously, I had a lot of weight to lose. I was very worried about the loose skin. So I introduced a 3-day fast twice a month. I found it incredibly easy. I could have gone longer. And
you didn't feel loss of energy or
nothing like that. No, walking and dancing gave me enormous energy. I felt fantastic, really, almost from the get-go. When I came back, I think I had gotten down to around 90 kilos, probably in October, November, and I started to look very different. And 90 kilos sounds like an enormous amount to a lot of people, but when you're 123, 90 is a lot less. And my heaviest weight, I was 123 kilos, and now I'm between 60 and 63 kilos, and that's an enormous difference.
Oh my God,
right?
that is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, well done you. It's we know it's like it's so difficult to do that, and that's why so many people they can usually lose some weight and then they go back to their old way of eating.
That's what I've done forever. I've lost 15 kilos. I've regained 20. I've done that so many times.
So for anyone listening, like your why was, you wanted to be healthy. You didn't want to feel humiliated when you met new people, old friends that knew you as a slim Kerensa, and you were worried about dementia.
Yes. I mean, I think the important thing I've forgotten to say is that when this person died at the age of 77, who was slim, who was fit, who exercised, the thought occurred to me, hang on a second, she's 77, I'm 61. That's 16 years from now, which means my youngest child will be in his 30s if I die at 77. And I thought, I can't do that to my children. I can't disappear before they turn 40, and also don't want dementia, because having parents with dementia, I would not want to do that to my children. And that was a very important driver for me. Was I want to be healthy, and something that had as you know me. That's never been that big concern for me. I haven't exercised very much over the most of my life. It's really only now in the last 2 years that I've exercised, a lot. I'm in the best shape that I've ever been in my life at the age of 62, which is really incredible.
Yeah.
And sad too, right? But, and I feel fantastic. I feel like a midlife goddess because, everything about me is different. My approach to everything is different. I have, tons and tons of energy. But it is all related to, the revenge tour, which is going back, a year later, going back much thinner and going back healthy. What was their reaction when you did go back? Shock, absolute shock. And also, oh my God, how come you only eat once a day? You can't eat only once a day. You're too thin. The typical reaction that you get from people. It was a big difference. I'd lost 45 kilos in that time. So I lost the rest of it when I came back from Canada. So generally it was shock, but suddenly I looked fantastic in everything, right? Everything I wore was amazing. And it was a complete...
Have you been buying lots of new clothes?
I have bought lots of new clothes, but just that change, I was very aware that suddenly everything I wore triggered a reaction from people. It is very interesting that, the summer before I hadn't had a single comment on anything I wore, and suddenly everything I wore was beautiful. In a way it made me quite sad, but also I loved it, right? Because I was loving wearing all the new clothes. But back to a question you asked me before about why I wasn't hungry. I had done a lot of research on intermittent fasting on eating OMAD. And one of the things that they say about OMAD is that you lose your hunger after around
OMAD's one meal a day.
Yeah. So that you do lose your hunger after around 3 or 4 days. And it's the same with fasting. You lose your hunger, after 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
Everything, it comes back a little bit later. But because I exercise so much, and because I had enormous amounts of energy, and because I did eat very well, eating 1,500 calories, that's a good diet, right? It's a good amount of calories to eat. I was eating a lot of protein, which fills you up. So I just wasn't hungry. And I didn't have any cravings at all in that year, or even now, since then.
I mean, you make it sound so easy. We're sitting here talking now.
Yeah.
Obviously it's been a journey for you.
Yeah.
And just remind me the time period that you
So I started this, let's say, July 1st, 2022, and I reached my goal weight of 60 kilos by the end of September.
So you have lost 60 kilos in 2 years.
Yeah. No, just 18 months, I think it is. Yeah. June 22 to September 23. Yeah. So whatever that is. Yeah.
And do you feel this time you're going to be able to keep?
Oh yes,
keep this weight, maintain this weight.
Absolutely no doubt in my mind. Yeah, I think it's driven by a desire to live as healthy life as I can, to not let weight be the reason that I should die younger, or I'm not to get vascular dementia. As you know, I had my genes tested to see whether I had the APO4OE gene, which is the one that predicates dementia. And I don't have that, so I thought, okay, that gives me control. That gives me control over my destiny. I'm not going to get vascular dementia as long as I don't have a stroke, and my blood pressure is now normal. And then this past summer, I had another DEXA scan, and my bone density was normal, was in the good range, and which
That's
was
amazing.
huge.
Yeah.
And you know
Yeah.
how that's almost the best thing that's happened. I think I told you a long time ago, or not a long time ago, a while ago, that I bought these scales that measured all my body
Your muscle mass and your
muscle
body
mass.
fat and subcutaneous.
Yeah,
and,
so I sort of, when I started the process of weighing myself daily, or, I never weighed myself daily, weighing myself weekly, everything was in the red. And now when I weigh myself, everything is in the green, except for I've still got 32% body fat, which I'm now working with a personal trainer to convert that fat back to muscle so that, I can get down to an even better range.
Gosh,
Yeah.
amazing. You
Yeah.
blow me away. This is so amazing. And,
Yeah.
So you really didn't have any points during that 2 years where you thought, this is tough.
No.
I'm finding it hard to be consistent. No.
No, but I think it was because I had the focus of going back to Canada on this so-called revenge tour, which nobody knew about other than me.
Yeah.
In my head, I was going back to prove to them.
Yeah, that was a powerful why.
That was a powerful why. That and this desire not to die young. And I suddenly realized my mortality was there. With T dying at 77, I thought, oh my God, I'm 61. What the hell am I doing with my life? And, and now to look at it and see that I've been fat 40% of my life. And it's funny because, in preparation for today, I was looking at photographs and I went back through so many years and I realized I'm not in our family history because I would never be in photographs. So, not only was I removing myself, I was obliterating myself in group photographs to be behind somebody. There I am, and there's so many family photographs and family holidays where I'm in only one photograph. And that is so sad because that's our life.
Yeah.
And of course, I haven't talked about what it must have been like for my children. Your children get teased. My children never told me that they were teased ever about me, but I'm sure they were, because they were very loyal. Because it's not easy, and both my children wanted me to lose weight. Funnily enough, they've barely reacted since I've lost the weight, but that's boys. I think girls would be more satisfying in that way, but they do like it. I know that they do like it because if I ask them, they will say yes. They've noticed it.
Yeah.
But they didn't like it. They didn't like it.
I mean, not only have you lost the weight, and again, I just want to reiterate that it's not all about weight loss and low calorie diets. You want to do this in a really healthy fashion and make sure you're getting, your proteins and your fats and your complex
Healthy
carbohydrates,
fats,
and lots of vegetables, and eating to nourish your body at the same time. But you have managed to lose that weight and to stay strong.
Yeah.
And you've also you've done lots of exercise as well, and you
yeah.
are looking very trim and
Yeah.
very in shape, and you don't look like someone who's lost a lot of weight and is quite weak. You look like someone who's lost a lot of weight and has a strong physique.
Yes.
How have you done that?
I've lifted weights. I think I practically run when I walk now. I walk so fast. I got myself a treadmill, and I started to run on that. And I've never run in my life. I've never liked running. I think it's all those things. It's building, having biceps that I never had before, having leg muscles I never had before, suddenly having these muscles, in my buttocks that I'd never had before. And I thought, this is what it feels like. I can remember, funnily enough, when you and I were on the island of Porquerolles when I was 7 or 8 months pregnant with my second son. And I remember you gliding up a hill. And I remember thinking, how did she do that? She just cycled up a hill as if it was nothing. And I realized I can do that now, right? Because when you don't have weight on you, everything is so much easier. You sort of glide through life. And so I must admit, feeling slim, and a few weeks ago, I actually, bought a size 6. I've never thought I would ever do that in my life, to go from a 24 to a 6. It's just extraordinary. And every time, I try something on, it's an 8 or a 6 or a 10. I still think I'm not going to get into it. And when it glides on, I just can't believe it. So it does feel fantastic. But more than that, it's about how I feel inside. I just feel so strong. And like I said earlier, this is the best shape I've ever been in my life, which is quite incredible. But I was never a big...
Especially, at 62, when a lot of us, even in our, late 40s, 50s, you can feel a bit like,
No, I feel like a 30-year-old or a 25-year-old even. I really feel completely different. And I'm sad that I have lost relationships with people, that I've avoided so many people in my life. And I've lost time with them. Now, I've caught up now, and of course, they won't even think about those years lost, but I think about those years lost. And I can't get it back, so I'm just going to do the best to live as well as I can for my children, for myself. I've got, 20, 30 years left. I want those to be fantastic years. And I feel that there's no question that that's exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah, no, I mean, God, anyone who's listening, I'm sure, they're feeling like I am. It's just, yeah, it's incredible. 60 kilos. It's such a lot of weight. And to have done it so well and so convincingly. And I, again, I'm reiterating that I've known you for 20 years and I've seen you yo-yo diet a few times.
Oh, yeah.
You go up and down and slim
Many times.
And overweight.
Yeah.
And I just know this time that you are going to keep it off. You are so determined. And we were talking again before we started recording that at Christmas time we were in some gorgeous garden centre in Oxford. And I was looking around for Kerensa. And I'm used to seeing,
a certain size.
A rounder Kerensa, if you like.
Yeah.
And I couldn't see you. And I sort of scanned, a sort of panoramic scan, and I saw a skinny blonde woman over there. And I'm still looking for you. And then I had to that is Kerensa. And you do, you have to make an adjustment because, you were, overweight. And again, there's so much shame and resentment and sort of inner flagellation for women that are overweight. So it's like, if you are overweight and you're listening to this, please, everything we've talked about today, just want to be, you always want to be happy in your own body. And if you're happier being a size 16, 18, that's absolutely fine. But if you want to lose a bit of weight, then, listening to Kerensa's story, I hope it's really inspirational. Yeah. So what would you say to anyone that is listening? And, we can all feel, I think being in midlife, there's a lot to do. And you've got to, I feel that in your 50s, and then you even from your 40s to your 50s, I feel you have to ring fence your energy a bit. And not saying you don't have as much energy, but you become aware that time is, finite, and you think, where do I want to put this precious energy that I have? And sometimes you just think, I can't be bothered. Yeah. And what, someone who's listening really is feeling very inspired by your story, wants to start on the weight loss journey. Where should they start?
I started on that day that I got the news, about T's death. And I started immediately with, I made a decision I was going to start. And I decided which diet, I think for everybody, the diet that suits them is the most important thing. So for me, intermittent fasting worked well, so that's what I chose. And as I said earlier, I think I said to myself, as long as I'm consistent and I stick with this without worrying too much about deviations, then I will be successful. And therefore, being consistent and making it tasty and exercising, those three things, they just work so well together. And it is iterative, right? Because the more you exercise, the better you get at it, the easier it is, and it feels really good. And that's what I learned, something I'd seen, people like you and other people who exercise a lot through my life, and I thought, what are they doing? Why do they exercise so much? Suddenly you realize when you do it, it's like putting one step in front of the other. Yeah. Making the decision to do it. Once I made the decision to do it, and it did start to have an effect quite quickly. And I think it's because I was consistent that it worked, but also because I chose something that suited me, and intermittent fasting doesn't suit everybody. I did make it healthy, I did make it tasty, and I just did it every day. Just put one foot in front of the other, and I made it easy, I think, to a certain extent. The structure was easy for me, but everybody's got their own easy. Everybody's got their own system.
So really it's about finding your why.
Your why.
Tuning into that. Yeah. And then, making progress, getting started. Yeah. And being consistent. You've mentioned being consistent a lot throughout this podcast.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Key to you, yeah?
Yeah, it was key to me because I knew that little bit of variations wouldn't matter so much as long as I had a consistent approach to it. I just kept at it. And I didn't actually so-called cheat on my diet because I found it so easy, and I don't know why I found it easy this time, other than the fact that I suppose my guiding principles were health in older age. I want to live for my children. Yeah. I don't want dementia under any circumstance. And this, this for me, not everybody's going to feel as humiliated as I felt. And I know that was my own personal journey, but that was a horrible feeling, and I never want to feel like that again.
And how do you feel now? And you're, psychologically?
I feel absolutely fantastic. Like I said earlier, I feel like a person half my age. I am very physically fit. I can do things that I could never do before, and I have enormous amounts of energy. And I love wearing clothes, which I've hidden in them for years, and now suddenly, all these lovely clothes fit, and that's actually a very nice feeling.
Yeah. Amazing. I mean, huge congratulations.
Thank you.
And I hope everybody's been inspired and enjoyed Kerensa's story, because it is quite a story. And if you want to get in contact with Kerensa, you can contact me through my Instagram page or my email, which I will put on the outro and in the show notes. And I think it would be, I think you should give talks and, go and speak to women and help inspire women to get started. But I just want to say, if you are a woman listening to this and you think that it's too late, however old you are, and maybe you've been overweight a long time or not, but whatever your hurdle might be, listen to this and be empowered by, Kerensa could do it, you can do it.
Yeah.
And
I think 40% of my life I was fat. That's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. And, anybody can do it. It doesn't matter how old you are.
Yeah.
You have got your inner midlife goddess, and she just needs, time to come out, and anyone, can do it. So
and it does.
It's getting into
feel.
that positive mindset as well,
true,
isn't it?
Yeah.
And believing. And I hope today that people can listen to this and listen to you and start believing, because I think that's where it starts. If you can believe that you can do it, you can do it.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Yeah. So we're going to round up there, but is there anything else you want to say to the listeners before we sign off, Kerensa?
This
is
a
one
little.
last thought?
I just say what this sad thing is. I just wish I'd had this realization, 30 years earlier. But I can't do anything about that. I am excited about the next 20 years, and of course, 60 to 80. One isn't always excited about that, but I'm actually very excited about the next 20 years because I'm just going to enjoy them to the max, and that's because of how I feel now.
Always a silver lining.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thanks for the privilege.
That was a lot of personal information, and I hope you can go on and work with women, because I think you could inspire a lot of women.
Thank you very much.
Really helpful. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you'd like to find out more about my approach, you can find me and lots of my simple, nutritious recipes demonstrated on Instagram at Amanda Ryder Nutrition, and that's Ryder with a Y. Or you can visit my website, www.amandaryder.co.uk, or if you'd like a copy of my book, Feel Good for Menopause, you can find that on Amazon. And of course, if you enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate it if you could like, follow, or click the subscribe button. It will really help me grow the podcast and keep me going, so thank you. And of course, do get in touch. I'd always love to hear from you. So that leaves me to say I'm sending lots of love and light from my midlife goddess to yours. See you next week. Bye for now.